Welcome aboard the Bio Train. In this video, we're going to talk about chemical bonds, both covalent and ionic. Individual elements in the periodic table can bond together in specific ratios to make chemical compounds and molecules. Let's begin with covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are chemical bonds that form between atoms when they share pairs of valence electrons. They are the strongest type of bond. An example of a covalent bond is hydrogen gas. Two hydrogen molecules can be covalently bonded together with a single covalent bond. The amount of electrons that an atom has in its outer energy level determines how many covalent bonds an atom likes to form. Atoms like to have their outer energy level filled with electrons. Using hydrogen as an example, the first energy level holds 2 electrons. Hydrogen only has 1 electron, so hydrogen likes to share 1 electron with another atom in order to have 2 electrons in its first energy level. This is why hydrogen forms single covalent bonds with other atoms. Oxygen, on the other hand, likes to form 2 covalent bonds. Its outer energy level holds 8 electrons total, but it only has 6 electrons in its outer energy level. So oxygen likes to share 2 electrons with other atoms, meaning that oxygen likes to form 2 covalent bonds. Let's look at one more example. Carbon likes to form 4 covalent bonds. Can you tell why? The answer is because the outer energy level of carbon has 4 electrons and it would like to have 8 in order to be full. By forming 4 covalent bonds with other atoms, the carbon atom fills its outer energy level with 8 electrons, 4 of its own and 4 shared with other atoms. 4 is generally the maximum number of covalent bonds that one atom can form with other atoms. The atoms have to get physically close enough to each other so that the outer energy levels overlap enough for the electrons to start spinning around both nuclei. There isn't enough room to form more than 4 covalent bonds. Let's look at how these 2 atoms of hydrogen will bond together covalently. Each atom would like to share 1 electron in order to fill its outer energy level. By one hydrogen bonding with another, they both fill their outer energy level and create molecular hydrogen or hydrogen gas, a covalently bonded compound. There are 3 types of covalent bonds that can form: single covalent bonds, double covalent bonds, and triple covalent bonds. There are no quadruple covalent bonds. A single covalent bond shares 1 pair of electrons between atoms. A double covalent bond shares 2 pairs of electrons. And a triple covalent bond shares 3 pairs of electrons. A structural formula shows how many covalent bonds are between atoms. A single covalent bond is shown with 1 line between the element symbols. A double covalent bond is shown with 2 lines, and a triple covalent bond is shown with 3 lines. Now let's turn our attention to ionic bonds. Ionic bonds form by the attraction of oppositely charged ions. Ions form when an atom either loses or gains electrons. Ionic bonds are much, much weaker than covalent bonds. There is no sharing of electrons in the formation of ionic bonds. Let's look at how ions form. A sodium atom has 1 electron in its outer energy level. It likes to lose that electron. The chlorine atom needs 1 electron to fill its outer energy level, so it likes to gain 1 electron. The sodium atom loses an electron and the chlorine atom gains an electron. This causes the sodium atom to become a positively charged ion and the chlorine atom to become a negatively charged ion. These 2 atoms are now ions, and they can form an ionic bond. Let's look at that with another diagram. Because electrons are negatively charged, when the sodium atom loses the negatively charged electron and the chlorine atom picks up the negatively charged electrons, that changes the charges of the atom. The sodium now has an extra positive proton, so it becomes positively charged. The chlorine has picked up an extra negatively charged electron, so now it becomes a negatively charged ion. This allows them to form ionic bonds because the oppositely charged ions attract each other and form weak ionic bonds. One last diagram. The positively charged ion has an extra proton, so it's positively charged. The negatively charged ion has an extra electron, so it's negatively charged. These ions can form an ionic bond. They are not sharing electrons. The opposite charges are just attracting each other and forming an ionic bond. To recap, there are two types of chemical bonds. Covalent bonds, where atoms share electrons. There are three types of covalent bonds: single covalent bonds, double covalent bonds, and triple covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are the strongest types of chemical bonds. Ionic bonds are formed by the attraction of oppositely charged ions. Ions form when atoms either lose or gain electrons. Ionic bonds are much weaker than covalent bonds. I hope that helps you stay comfortably seated on the bio train.